In my introduction, he said that I'm expert in smart cities. That is not exactly the thing I would like to claim. Yes, I understand urban local bodies little bit, and urban local bodies and smart cities are one and the same thing because some of the urban local bodies have been selected to become the smart cities. Uh, I was part of certain projects where accounting reforms were carried out in urban local bodies, and that is how I happen to know. Now, the concept of this ESG has already been discussed by earlier speakers since morning. So, some of the things you may find as a repetition. Kindly bear with me, but I'll try not to take much of your time on those things which have already been stated by other speakers. So in June 2004, the United Nations came out with a global compact report titled "Who Care Wins." Was the first time probably when ESG was recognized in a very formal manner on an international platform. Then we all know that Kyoto Treaty took place, and then G8 summit also took place in 2005. UNDP also took note of it, and the things have started moving. 2015 we had this Paris Agreement, and the pandemic COVID has also brought a lot of consciousness about the environment and related stuff, and that has speeded up the entire process of recognition of ESG in a meaningful manner. On the Independence Day, our Honorable Prime Minister said in his speech that country should be energy independent over a period of time. Certain targets have also been kept. Ethanol is one area where the entire central government is quite bullish to replace the fossil fuel in the fastest possible manner with this biofuel. In the COP26, which we have heard from the other speakers also, Honorable Prime Minister came out with 5-point declaration, and those 5 points are that India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2020. It's a very ambitious target for any country to achieve. Next declaration was that India will meet 50% of its energy requirement from renewable energy by again 2020, and the entire country to become net zero carbon emission by 2070, reduce carbon emissions by 1 billion tons, and bring down the economy's carbon intensity. Now these are the declarations which have been done by the country in the international forum, and the process has started to achieve these declaration or the targets. These targets cannot be done or achieved without the combined efforts of all. And when I say combined effort, that means even the civic bodies or the city administration included in that, like the smart city. So when we talk about ESG, if I take these three separately, then environmental related issues would be more on the greenhouse gas emission or air and water pollution, natural resources, biodiversity, and so on. Like you have already heard this since morning or maybe yesterday also. So I would not take much of your time in repeating the things. But one thing which I would like to tell in the social segment is the education initiatives or the inequalities are one of the major areas where a lot of work is required to be done. As we all know, Sustainable Development Goals. All the members of United Nations General Assembly took a vow that all nations, have to set certain targets, and those targets are to be met, and these are known as Sustainable Development Goals. These goals, India is also part of it. So when we talk about Sustainable Development Goals, I have tried to divide these sustainable goals into three categories, or the three areas which are predominantly these targets are related to. Like one area is environment, another is social, and the third one is governance. So if I take say no poverty, predominantly this falls under the social category. If I take the Sustainable Development Goal 16, which relates to peace, justice and strong institutions, and if I have to categorize this in the any of the three, you would find that the governance is the right bifurcation for this goal. But now let us see the last item, the sustainable goal number 11, which says sustainable cities and communities. This is perhaps the only one goal among all the 17 goals which falls under all the three categories. Why so? Because sustainable city would also mean environment friendly, it would also mean socially acceptable, and governance has to be good, the transparency has to be there, and the things have to be done or governed in the manner it should be. So this is one sustainable goal for the country to be achieved, where all the three elements of E, S, G are there. So on one side we have sustainable development goals to be achieved, and the other side this ESG, and this my topic today is about the city and sustainable city. If we just deliberate upon sustainable city, let's just recall in 2019 what was the situation in Chennai. It had ran out of the water. There was no water available. Any city which has to serve to the citizen and provide citizen-centric services, water is one of the basic necessity. Now, if water was not there, the city has to have those actions to be taken to make it sustainable on that particular front. Now, this front could be different for each city. Like Visakhapatnam may have some other thing to take care in comparison to maybe Faridabad, or similarly any other example. If we talk about Delhi, not very far in the past, there was a situation when even the breathing itself had become very difficult. Now that was the situation in Delhi itself. So it may not be there in other cities, but city specific situations are there, and those are to be tackled with the help of focus towards E, focus towards S, and focus towards G. Urbanization is happening at a very, very fast pace. People are moving away from villages and coming to the cities. Smaller cities are becoming bigger cities, and bigger cities are becoming much, much bigger cities. So there is a tremendous pressure of central government and state government resources to be deployed in urban development. If we recall the budget speech of Honorable Finance Minister, which was delivered on the 1st of February, the focus areas for the economic development were listed out, and PM Gati Shakti was one of the major area of the entire resource consumption. Deployment with the focus of inclusive development, productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, and energy transition. In the last few slides, I told about the commitment which has already been given by the country in the last COP26, where the energy replacement, 50% of the energy replacement has been committed from fossil fuel to the renewable energy sources. Same thing we are finding space in the budget speech as such. So that means it is not just a declaration or just a sort of a statement. The roadmap is there and things have started moving in. If we see, climate action and financing of investment is also one of the focus area of the budget. It is given, she said it in her speech also, that these are my priorities, and these are the areas where the country is going to move ahead. The rapid urbanization was also stated in her speech, that by the time India attains its 100th birthday, 50% or more population of the country would be in cities. So gone are those days when we used to say that our country is such where it's it is only housed in the farms, fields and agriculture areas and villages, 50% and more population to be there in cities. That is the statement in the budget speech of Honorable Finance Minister in the budget for 22-23. This itself shows what all things are to be done and how those things are to be done. We will discuss in further slides. The PM Gati Shakti program has got 7 engines, and those 7 engines include the clean energy, the public transport, the clean tech and governance solution, and special mobility zones, electric vehicle and so on. So gone are those days, or gone are that particular time when we used to only think that there will be a time when electric vehicle will be plied. Now it is happening, and it is going to further happen. And not just electric vehicle, let's talk about replacement of petrol. The biofuel coming out of maize or coming out of the rice is one of the finest example how this can fit into the entire ecosystem. Just take one example. Every year we spend thousands and lakhs of crore of rupees in importing the crude. And at the same time, the government resources also put in lot of money to buy the agricultural produce which is of the farmer, because the farmer is not having any particular market for the produce which he has brought in from his field. Take example of rice, or paddy, or take example of wheat. Most of the state governments deploy their resources to buy the stuff which has been grown by the farmer. And now just see, on one side we are importing crude, on the other side this spare paddy can be converted into rice, and this rice can be converted into ethanol, and that ethanol can be blended in our vehicles. The engines which we are already using in our vehicle can take up to 20% of ethanol without any change. And whatever changes are also required to be done, those can be done without much pain. There are countries which are using 100% ethanol. So a good and full-fledged ecosystem will come into place. On one side, the agricultural produce of the farmer will get sold on its own without interference and intervention of the state government or the central government. And on the other side, the crude import will come down to that extent. So wonderful situation both ways. So government will have more money to be available with them, and that money can be utilized for more productive use, such as the requirement for the infrastructure. When we are saying that more than 50% population would be in urban areas, that means rapid increase in the availability of infrastructure has to happen. It cannot be without that. If we are facing today the challenge of traffic in cities like in metro cities or in even the other A tier city or B tier cities, what is going to happen 10 years down the line? It is only going to get worsened unless something radically different is done. So that is where the concept comes in, that create the infrastructure. Every infrastructure would require money. One of the very good way to raise resources is by using the ESG into the scheme of things or into the projects which are being going to be commissioned for infrastructure creation by the cities. And when I say city, means city administration, urban local body, or popularly known as Nagar Nigam, or maybe the smart city of Delhi or Faridabad smart city. You can name it anyway. But the point here is that the infrastructure creation would require a lot of money. Where from that money will come? And that money has to come at affordable price, affordable rate, and then only it can be sustainable. Otherwise, it won't be sustainable as such. Environmental challenges, as I said, just gave the example of Delhi, that the emission of the carbon dioxide, when it is getting increased, and we are facing situations at times, and this is happening in across the board in almost all the cities, that the carbon emission level have increased. Every one of us is using energy in one form or the another. We all are using air conditioning. Every year the air conditioning is only going up. And we all know what kind of gases are getting emitted from the use of the air conditioners. So problem is there, and now we have to come out with the more solutions towards the problem which is centered around. The stress of the urbanization, as I said earlier, the mass migration and the environmental and regulatory things are going to come in our way, particularly when the mass scale urbanization is happening. So our focus should be on those areas, and we should aim for better quality of life by focusing on those areas. And when we talk about ESG and we say that, the smart city. Now, what typically is a smart city? If we talk about Mission Smart City, which was announced in June 2015 by Honorable Prime Minister, that is comprising of some 100 cities in the country. Now, those cities were selected not on random, but based on a competition. This competition was organized in a very scientific and very detailed manner. The cities were asked to show their inclination towards participation in the competition, and those cities which had participated and meaningfully, they were in fact given a grant of rupees 2 crore rupees each just to prepare the document. And documents means come out with the existing livability index of that particular city, come out with a smart city plan, how that plan is to be done, what are going to be the outcome, and how that outcome is going to be measured, and what would be the impact on the livability index after the plans are implemented. So each city which has been selected, each of these 100 cities which have been selected are based on the competition, and that competition was on the smart city plan. Each plan has got 3 ways of financing. One way of the financing is through the Smart City Fund. The Smart City Fund is getting contributed by central government and state government in equal proportion. Second area where from the financing is coming is PPP project. Now this is one area which is of quite interest, and in further slides we will see how ESG can contribute in getting more PPP funds for a city. Third is the convergence. Lot of the activities of the various department of central and state government and of urban local authorities, they work on similar pattern. Sometimes they work they also spend money where the same thing can also be achieved by converging their thought process, their actions and their projects, and thereby money need not be spent by both, money can be spent by one, and the convergence can bring the benefit of the project which is underway. So when we talk about the ESG and we say that smart cities, how they should implement, first of all, should they implement? Yes, they should implement. Why? Because when we talk about the targets of the country, these targets are not of only corporates. These targets are for everybody, for me, you, all the institutions, everybody has to follow certain things and change our mindset towards working, towards use in a manner that we are compliant towards ESG, we are compliant towards sustainable development goals, thereby the targets can be met. Cities are also not exception. City administration, urban local body or any city administration also has to follow ESG practices in all its program. If they don't follow, then probably the overall index or overall achievement would not be available, would not be achieved. And that is where it is necessary that the cities should proactively bring in the ESG practices in all their programs. They are already doing those programs. We will see in further slides what programs they are doing and how they can contribute towards E and S and G, and together all can come out with the benefits. As I said, Mission Smart City is more focused towards smart or smarter solutions, mostly technology oriented, and many a times may not be technology oriented but otherwise touching to the very core of the theme for which that solution has been thought of, on a sustainable manner or in a sustainable manner. If a solution is there for one time, it may not be categorized as smarter solution. It has to be sustainable in nature, sustainable by way of finance, sustainable by way of technology, sustainable by way of scalability, and so on. So when we say smart city, And when we say the mission smart city typically has been done in such a manner that out of the 100 smart cities which have been selected, they all are linked to their urban local body. So if I say Faridabad Nagar Nigam, there is a Faridabad smart city. Faridabad Nagar Nigam owns that smart city, and this smart city will ultimately, after the project period is over, will get subsumed in Faridabad Nagar Nigam. So ultimately it is a third tier of the government. As we know, first tier of the government is central government, second is state government, and third is the local authority. So for all practical purposes, the urban local body is the third tier of government, which is also having the right to collect taxes, spend money on infrastructure, spend money on providing citizen-centric services. Smart city essentially is an extended arm of urban local body. Like I gave the example of Faridabad. Similar example can be there. Raipur, I can say Raipur is also having a smart city, or Nava Raipur or Bilaspur. There are 100 of them. Now, typically, what a urban local body does, this is one area which is touched upon in our life on day-to-day basis. We all generate from our household certain amount of garbage. It could be food garbage, it could be non-food garbage, it could be veg food garbage, or maybe non-veg food garbage, it could be plastic, it could be paper, it could be glasses, or so on. We all do that. And every day somebody comes and collects. If not someday, in some places maybe the alternate day or whatever, somebody collects. And then what is done of that waste? We have seen mountains also of such garbage at various locations. That is one way of using that wastage. And when we do that, we are not taking care of E of ESG. Environment is not being taken care of if we are just dumping the waste taken from the household or from the shops or from the hotels, and we are putting it in a place and then making a mountain out of it. That is not the right way. So what can be done and how that can be done? What can be done is recycling. Everybody now knows that most of the things which we take out every day from our household is recyclable. And when it is recyclable, it is having monetary value also. And when it is having monetary value, there can be an ecosystem which can happen on its own. Take example, from our household, we don't throw away the used newspaper. Why? Because there is a market available for that used newspaper, and somebody will come and pay us. Hardly amount. Amount is not material. A material thing is that we don't throw it. If the similar way, if we can create a value to the garbage which we are generating and incentivize the person who is putting it into the right box, or we can create a value where money can be given to the person for bringing that kind of garbage in a particular format. That is the way E can be used for a very traditional role of a ULB / smart city, that is garbage collection. Every day it is done. So when every day it is done, this is something which is touching us in a very nice and very close manner. When we talk about recycling of waste, kindly be informed that this is not something which I am saying which has not happened. It has already happened in a city called Ambikapur in Chhattisgarh area. It was started as a pilot project, very successfully rolled out. Now it is getting rolled out in rest of the country also. And this is the way forward. Self-help groups were created, and self-help group of those who are needy for the job, particularly the ladies not working in any other formal manner and taking care of their houses. Those self-help groups, because first of all, please appreciate the point, taking out garbage is not full day job, it is few hours job. So those who are available during that hour, they can do it. So self-help groups were created, and those self-help group took a user fee. That means there was no burden of any amount on the urban local body, and the the garbage which was getting collected from the self-help group was recycled, and that actually created a positive amount coming to the urban local body. Later on, this was the rights to collect garbage were auctioned. Can you believe it? The right to collect garbage were auctioned, and a positive grant was received by various urban local bodies in the same manner. So for sanitation, if this kind of model is adopted in other smart cities, or maybe all the cities of the country, you see the impact on E would be that it would be an environment friendly thing, because garbage is not going to be collected and kept as a mountain. So that activity would be environment friendly. Socially, it will give more job security and togetherness to the self-help group persons. The governance would be highlighted, it would be benefited with the leadership which the city will take in taking care of the garbage. So solid waste management is one of the area which I would recommend and highlight for cities to do it in a different manner, so as to take care of E, so as to take care of S, and so as to take care of G. If we see the various announcements from the central government and followed up by the state government as well, the idea is to reduce the traffic congestion, and you can do it. One way of doing it is to give more focus towards public transport. So instead of 10 vehicles of 10 cars going in one direction with one person each, if those 10 people can sit down in a bus, and that bus can take them to the desired place, that would save a lot of fuel, and that will also save a lot of the problems of traffic congestion. The mobility can also be further strengthened with the use of electric vehicles. Now, if we say what a city administration can do towards it, the city administration can do many things. Example, all those places which are of, say, tourist interest, there can be a regulation, because city administration, which is smart city /ULB, is also a regulator, and regulator can come out with different practices. Like when you go to maybe Taj Mahal, and you will find that before a particular point you are not allowed to take your vehicle to that area because of the proximity of the emissions to the Taj Mahal. Now similar thing can be done in many other places. We can have places which should only be where only electric vehicle can be used. Similarly, the transportation and other mobility regulations can come in by the civic administration, so as to see that the emissions levels are going down. With that, there would be citizen satisfaction coming in, which will be the social benefit ascribed to that, and the civic organizations will win confidence of the citizens as well. Now take example of parking. If in a road enough space is not there, enough good location is not there for parking, then what happens? Most of those roads you will find vehicle would be parked, and the road would get congested. This happens every day. This happens in most of the roads in the city area, mofussil area, where vehicles would be parked and the parking space is not there. The parking spaces are actually available. I mean, the open land is available with most of the urban local bodies. The problem comes in how to make parking and how to use those parking and how to make it sustainable from the O&M point of view. Now here comes the different way of thinking, and that way could be that instead of doing the parking initiative yourself, probably you can think of doing it with the PPP mode. I can share hundreds of such examples where in a PPP mode similar things have done, and those things are becoming increasingly popular. And when a city adopts such practices, it is also taking care of E, it is also taking care of S, and it is also taking care of G. Because not only a smart parking will bring will reduce the traffic congestion on the road, it will also create business opportunities, it will bring open spaces, and accident prevention will happen. In fact, lot of policing which is right now used in taking out those vehicles which are kept on the roads, taking out those vehicles, and then later on putting a challan and then releasing those vehicles. Lot of efforts of the police, they are actually unproductive in nature. And if we can have better and smarter parking solutions, probably this kind of wastage can be reduced. Similarly, if we see the education related work which are done by the urban local body / smart city. Now, we know that, and particularly the COVID period has taught all of us that physical availability may or may not be possible at certain times. Still, the education has to go on, and smarter way of education is coming by app-based education. Most of the ULBs may not have money to do this on their own, but they can find out, they can bring more people to subscribe, to bring in maybe the grants fund, maybe the CSR funds, so that the students who are in those school or colleges which are run by civic administration can also get access to smarter way of the education. This will also take care of the ESG parameters. The training to teachers and training to the parents, as well as the new curriculum can also be started or can be added into the present curriculum on the ESG, which can educate the student right from his childhood, and more focus can come in. Ultimately, when we proudly say that in Singapore you cannot throw a chewing gum because it is banned, and at the same time there are certain penalties if somebody does that. So one has to do it both ways. So one way I am saying, do it with the education. On the other side, bring in the laws also to see that the goals are achieved. Most of us have seen that the gardens which are maintained by urban local bodies, over a period of time, they tend to spend a lot of money over there in maintenance of those gardens or lakes or ponds or amusement areas or picnic spot. I mean, there are different varieties of the things which any urban local body does, and this is one area of that. In this area, the smarter way of bringing in ESG is to see, as I said, in a smart city, the smart city plan can be funded in three ways. One is the smart city fund, which is the physical money given 50% by central government and 50% by state government. But this is not enough. You can't do everything out of this money. You have to bring in, the public into it. And when more consensus is there, then only the things are going to work. So how do you bring public into it? This is what I'm trying to say. Take example of park. If you can bring corporates, if you can bring NGOs to maintain those parks, maybe in lieu of some advertisement rights, like there can be a garden with a one slogan somewhere that this is maintained by Patanjali or any other, whatever name you want to, Tata, Reliance, whatever. Now this way, civic body will reduce its cost. It will enhance the maintenance because the brand name of that particular corporate is attached to that garden. More gardens can come in, which means I can increase the E part of the ESG without incurring much of my own resources. The money can come in from other. Of course, land would be required, and as I said, most of the land is already owned by the ULBs. It is only getting idle, and sometimes it is getting encroached. So, of course, it may not be situation in all the ULBs, but I have seen many where spare land is available in abundance and can be used. And when I say that smart city can bring in ESG focus into its own thing, I also say that the smart city plan, which is not getting funded from the smart city fund, can be funded through PPP in this manner. Take example of garden. And similarly for the health, and similarly for the smaller areas also. Sometimes we feel the variety of the work ULB does, it is unimaginable. I mean, many a times, or most of the time, the urban local bodies are also supposed to maintain the crematorium. And new ways are now started coming in. Instead of electricity, instead of the traditional wood, the new cow dung based wood is now, pallets have started coming in, which is environment friendly. So just to give it just as a reference, that there are lot many things which can be put into those activities which smart city is already doing, change it in little bit here and there, and one can achieve the benefit which are ascribed to E, S and G of the ESG, which we saw in the earlier slides. The tangible and intangible benefits are immense. In my earlier speaker, Spandan also said, and Nisha also said, touched based on that. Nisha said about carbon credits, which is clearly money coming in out of the ESG practices. Spandan also said that the bottom line is not getting adversely affected just because you are more focused towards ESG. That is what I'm now bringing on the table is ESG is not confined only to corporates. ESG is something which we all have to adopt in our working, thinking, ideology, behavior, everything, including the civic administration or urban local body or the smart city. So when smart city does that, smart city would also be entitled to carbon credits. It can raise further resources out of those practices, which right now, the same work the urban local body is doing right now, like taking garbage, we saw in the first example. If we do it differently, the civics administration would be entitled for getting remuneration in the form of carbon credits which are sellable. What is the next tangible benefit? We saw in the other deliberations as well as now, finance and ESG are now getting intermixed. The concepts are getting intermixed. You are ESG compliant, you are going to have better opportunities of financing. You are ESG compliant, you can attract more investment. You are ESG compliant, you can attract finance at a lower rate than to the prevailing rate. Indian Banker Association has come out with a voluntary guideline, right now it is voluntary in nature, for ESG implementation, and all banks have been told to give it to all their corporates in a phased manner and ask them to bring more ESG compliance into their working. Incentive mechanism is under preparation. The moment incentive mechanism is given, so as I said, there are two ways to deal with it. One is by regulation and other is by incentive. So if I tell any company or any borrower that if you are ESG compliant, your rate of interest would be 1% lower or 0.5% lower, he would be more tempted, because then it is a money coming in by way of cost saving. It is not physically money coming, but cost saving is happening on the interest outgo. Similarly, for the city to issue green bonds, like Spandan said in his deliberation, Adani has issued green bond recently for their renewable expansion or renewable investments. LIC is preparing itself for IPO, and already the ESG related compliances are under evaluation. These are the things which are happening. So intermix. So let us take same example for the city. In the city also, more money can come in. Money can come in at a lesser rate of interest. Bonds can be issued. Green bonds can be for two types. One is for green activities, and another is when you are taking the money and using it yourself for green activities. Another is you are putting it in the investment for those who are doing it green activities. The energy conservation can come down with more ESG practices. Every city, every smart city has to give electricity on the street lights they have to bring in, and those street lights can be solar battery powered also. It can be instead of conventional CFL, it can be LED. More reduction in this emission can bring in more money to them. When we say smart city, it is not just only that smart city. Smart city can also be catalyst, can also be facilitator in bringing other SPVs to function. Take example, the city needs water every day. The smart city does not have fund of its own. The smart city can bring out a concept where public money can come in, the pipeline can come in to your household, the metering can happen, money can be collected by the operator, and some amount has to come into the smart city for giving these rights. So, there are various ways to structure the this thing, keeping in view the overall ESG framework. Now, how do we, and intangible benefits we have already discussed. There are many intangible benefits, and brand goodwill is, the most important of that. How do we do that? So, if a smart city wishes to get into implementation of ESG in a very meaningful manner in all those activities which it is already doing, I am not suggesting here for smart city to do anything more than what they were doing. I'm only saying they can do those things with a better focus on ESG, which will not only make them ESG compliant, but also will bring those tangible and intangible benefits to that particular city. So first of all is to create a task force. Now, why do we need a task force? Because this is something going to be different activity, and a lot of there is a variety of the stakeholders. Employees are one, the stakeholders could be elected representatives also, and could be, the officers. And once the stakeholders are, on a common platform, the synchronization with the larger vision can happen. And when I say larger vision, that larger vision is, again, it has to be, quantified somewhere. Like, for the country, we have said that we would be net zero by 2070. If each city can also come out with those plans, that how they would achieve net zero within a relatively shorter span of time, and how with that they would be in a position to attract more capital or reduce their present cost. That is the larger vision with which the plan has to synchronize. Metrics have to be established with reference to the livability index, workability, and sustainability is going to be the theme. If a thing is not sustainable, it will not fit under that SDG also, and it will not work also. So targets are to be prioritized. The project implementations have to be done in a manner where each day, each week, each quarter, some MIS have to be there to see whether we are working on that particular path or not. The evaluation and the monitoring has to happen on a very meaningful manner. And recognition, like Atul sir said about the rewards, and Nisha also said about the ESG rewards. Smart city can also have its own mechanism of rewarding those who are working in the manner it is required to work. Maybe, resident welfare association can be rewarded for the best practices in the garbage collection, and so on. So the conclusion is that the sustainability is that powerful force for the positive change which we are talking about. The smart city concept can bring in the desired benefits of the ESG, and positive social and environmental change with good governance can happen by focusing more towards the three things we just talked. If there are any question answer, I'm happy to answer.